All right, you guys. For our next project in watercolor, we are looking at the artist Jen Aranyi. Here is a photograph that I pulled from the internet of some of her work. Before we can do anything though, we need to tape off the edges of our paper so we have a nice clean white border when we're done. What I'm doing is pulling strips of tape. Most important thing, you don't just stick it right on the paper. First, stick it to your clothes. So your t-shirt, your jeans work great. Stick it a few times to de-sticky it so that when we go to pull it off at the end of this project, it won't be as likely to tear your paper. I'm lining it up just perfectly with the edge of my paper and then very gently, not hard, just gently kind of smooth it down, make sure there's no little bubbles or wrinkles along the picture side of your tape, okay? Looking at Jen Aranyi's work, the reason I chose it, she does these really pretty wet on wet sky scenes. So her skies always have these bleed together of colors and then she adds in these little stars. The other thing I like about her work is her ink work. She always does these snowy scenes down in sort of the bottom portion of her picture. I think we can copy something similar to this really easily. So first step today is actually just doing our ink drawing. Your second video will show you the sky. So I'm going to put this aside for a little bit here. We're going to do a zigzag across to make the mountains. Mountains are not perfect. Do not give me a perfect zigzag. So you need to try to kind of up, down, and as you go up and down, make sure you're varying the height of your mountains. It's up to you if you want big, tall peaks or just a few going across the page like that. Doesn't matter. So that's phase one. Go ahead and do it, or you can watch me do my whole video. I don't care. Next thing that I see her do in her work all the time are these shadows on her mountains to make them look kind of craggy and three-dimensional. To create that look, I'm going to start at the peak of each of my mountains. I'm going to draw sort of a zigzaggy, wiggly line down, and then I'm going to bring it up to the valley. Always on the left side of the peak. So here's another little peak. I'm going to draw a little zigzag down and bring it up to the valley on the left. Zigzag down to the valley. These don't really need to be perfect. You'd be surprised. Over to the valley. Make my zigzag, bring it to the valley. This one, we're not going to see the whole thing, but I still want to make sure I put it in there. Now, I'm going to go back in. I feel like I could use some more. It looks a little flat right here, doesn't it? So I'm going to kind of look at her work for a second and do just sort of little wiggly shape in there. Maybe one kind of right here. I'll probably do it. Maybe I'll put one right down here. Okay, so it feels a little less flat now. To shade these, we're going to do parallel lines, otherwise known as hatching. So very lightly with your skinny Sharpie, go ahead and fill each area in. Sorry, you're stuck watching me. If you get it, you could, of course, skip ahead in the video. I wish I were a video expert. I could do this on super speed, but I'm not. So you just get to watch me. As I rush, I'm peeking outside of my shapes, which I don't like, so don't rush. Try to keep your parallel lines about the same. It gives you sort of a nice textured shading rather than just a flat black. That would seem really, really dark. The next step after I finish my shading, we're going to add a little dimension to the foreground. To do that, we're going to do sort of a zigzag line, which I'll show you in a second, and we're going to add some trees. Okay, so these are starting to look a little more three-dimensional like mountains. Down here in my foreground, I notice that she tends to do something like this. She'll add trees in, and she'll do sort of a zigzag line to give texture to the landscape. So, starting back here, very lightly, I'm going to just kind of pull a zigzag down through my landscape like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Notice it's a zigzag. It is not an S. I almost have a straight corner here, but I just curve it a little bit. I'm bringing it together here just to sort of bring you forward in the painting. It would look a little weird if it went off the page. This is a perfect guideline for my depth. Up here, the trees are closer to me. Back here, the trees are farther away. I'm going to start by giving my little trees some stems. I'm going to throw a few trees in over here. As I come up here, this line is getting closer to me. So I'm going to make my trees a little bit taller. It's up to you how many you want to do. As I come along here, they're going to have to get bigger. Again, they're getting closer to me. And do I want some up here? It's up to you. I might throw a little cluster in over here when I'm done. To fill in your trees, you're doing a little sideways scribble. Our sideways scribble should go downwards to make sort of this cone-shaped tree. The top of the tree should be narrower than the bottom of the tree. That's what makes it look like some sort of pine tree or a fir tree. You can throw another one in there if you feel like you need to make them look a little more clustered. So when you're done watching me, pause the video, go ahead and get your ink part of your landscape done. Make sure that you have gotten the watercolor paper from me near the front of the classroom. It's a different type of paper than our drawing paper. Watercolor paper is actually made with cotton instead of tree fibers. Sometimes it's a mix. But the cotton keeps the paper from tending to warp or tear as easily as your regular drawing paper does, which is why we always try to use a watercolor paper rather than just a drawing paper when we do watercolor work. So once again, just watching me, I am scribbling down the side of each tree stem. I hope you can see. I'm always worried my hand's in the way. And notice as they got lower on the paper, they are closer to me, so my trees got bigger, and they take a little bit more scribbling to make it look like they're closer to me. I feel like I need some over here. Maybe I'm going to add myself a little cluster of trees. Scribble those in. If you're feeling super artsy today, you could try adding in that tent. It's not as hard as it looks. Just take a minute to observe that shape. I am about done doing trees. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video so you can stop watching me. Go ahead and get your drawing finished before you move on to the next video.